Hello and welcome to Creative Frequency, the show sharing the unconventional routes and unforgettable stories from artists making new waves in their creative careers. I'm Izzie Smith, and as a local artist myself, it's my mission to amplify unheard voices and demystify artistic careers by chatting to other creatives about their first-hand experiences. This episode, I'm delighted to talk all things textiles as we tune in to Mark Foster's Creative Frequency. Thank you, first of all, Mark, for travelling so far to come to the BCB studios. I always want to start this show by asking the guest who's come in who they are. So, Mark, who is Mark Foster?
I don't know if I know the answer. I dreamed of being either an architect, as my father was in the building trade as a surveyor, or going into art and be an art teacher. So my father's job moved just down to the other side of Bristol. I could have stayed at school or go to Bristol, so I went to Bristol. And a job was advertised on the television, literally to work in a theatrical costumiers in Bristol. And I thought, that'll do. That'll do.
So you ended up in the world of costumes. Tell us about the jobs that you do and the people you get to work with.
It's quite good. We do everything. We dye fabric. So in Namibia, I stood at 200-litre vats in 40 degrees, dyeing all the fabric for Mad Max Fury Road, which, if nothing else, the job itself was the privilege, but Namibia itself was... I'll never see Namibia again in the way that I saw it then. Alex Carey, who I did Mad Max Fury Road with, I first employed him, I think, on Fierce Creatures, fell in love with him. He was so dry and so funny. We became really good friends, and I eventually started working with him. We started on World War Z. And from there, we did the disguise outfits for Robert Downey Jr. on the second Sherlock. And that's the chair, which is just brilliant. And again, I keep things simple. How did you guys do it? Is it CGI? Is it camera trickery? No. How did you do it? And this is the answer I always give. I drew it. He coloured it in. And that's what we did. And then it was all to do with sitting Robert in the right place, the right camera angle. And it's a lovely sequence where you think the room is empty and then he gets up from the chair, and it's magic.
How does it feel going and sitting in a cinema or tuning into something on the TV that you have played such a massive part in creating the world of? You know, what's it like seeing it from the other side?
I only watch things, whether it's theatre, television or film. I watch it mostly for the words, the script, the story. I love the performance. I don't judge the technicalities of it. I know lots of costume people who go, the costume continuity was all over the place. I don't like that. I want to be entertained by it. I'm not a critic. I'm not there to judge it. There was a worldwide premiere of Mad Max Fury Road. And there were 4 of us in the car, and we were hideously late. And it's absolutely the truth. We got there, and all of us were bursting to go to the loo, a bit like when I arrived here. I think it's an age thing.
I promise I let him go. I just need to put that out there.
You did. And then we went in. We sat in the front rows. The screen was roughly where you're sat. So our heads were right back like this. And if you've seen the film, it felt like we were on a roller coaster, and we rolled out of it at the other end. To this day, I marvel at how it looks. Jenny Bevan designed a world. George Miller controlled that world. They were just fantastic people to be a part of this. there is no CGI. All the men on the pole swinging back and forth and flying through the air, they're all real. And the bit I really love is the guy on the bungee playing the electric guitar. It is, in fact, real flames that come out the end of the guitar. And it was the fact that we made it work. It had to be real. You could never present, and one of the gentlemen in the props department said, we tried presenting a prop that didn't work. It was dismissed there and then on the spot. Take it away, bring it back when it works. So everything did. All of those vehicles, I wouldn't say they were necessarily roadworthy, but my God, they did all drive.
So you've worked in both theatre, like stage and screen.
The theatre things, I'm slightly fraudulent. The theatre thing has happened because of Jill being involved with the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School.
So Jill's your partner, right?
Yeah, Jill's my partner.
Yeah.
Everything comes with a really good logic. There was one job I didn't get, which I really wanted, and I'd come back from Namibia, and they were advertising for some maternity cover at the Royal Shakespeare Company. And I really believed that I'd got the job. But one of the questions was, what do you think the difference is between screen and stage? And the only analogy I can do is the difference between a sort of fine art paintbrush and a dirty girt 2-inch decorating brush. The rather subtle things that we do for film are to be seen on a giant screen in absolute close-up. Mm-hmm. Whereas for theatre, you're in an auditorium, you could be sat quite a long way back. Anything too fiddly, you won't see. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of cutting the cloth differently or applying whatever you're using, paint or dye, just in a new and clever way. Alex, one of the great things that he did, he laughs and he said they always called me the dye boy, even though I was in my 40s, 50s, down at Glyndebourne Opera House. So as a tutor, he could teach me from both sides of it, for screen and for stage. So, yeah, he's a good man. And
I imagine the roles and the schedules are quite different working in costume for theatre compared to screen projects. For people that maybe don't know a lot about the logistics of costume, I guess, the technical requirements, can you talk through that process? Like, when do you come in to a film job compared to a theatre job? And what's the prep work like?
Well, Mad Max was a bit obscene, really, in a way. We were there for about 4 months before we even put a camera on its legs.
You were in Namibia for 4 months.
It was it's a long time. It's well over the 3 months, well over 12 weeks, in which time George Miller had changed the cars from being black to silver and then back to black. Warner Brothers were getting worried because money was just literally hemorrhaging away, and they said, for God's sake, put the camera on its legs now, otherwise you won't have any money left to film. But we did test runs, prototypes for every look of each costume. Theatre, I've discovered, has a new thing when they do the tech, because the tech is when you suddenly realise that the outfit the artist is wearing is not able to go up a ladder. And that actually happened on one, so that costume had to be adapted or indeed changed. When we do cinema, things will fail, but sometimes for odd reasons. The stilt walkers in Max were brilliant, and I'd always thought we could have put them in something with a beak, a bit like the plague doctor masks.
Cool.
But of course, when they go up on stilts, they're leaning forward, and the masks are just too heavy, so they couldn't be. So they were a failure. One of them I made, I have on a light in the annex in our house, in our garden, and you can put the light on and the eyes light up.
I love that so much. How often do you come up with really cool ideas that you would love to execute, but for logistical or budgetary reasons, they don't come to light?
Mostly it's the time that it might take. Sometimes not having big budgets makes you think outside the box. Thinking outside the box is when you're at your most creative. Having money thrown at you all the time, it just makes you follow a process because you know it's going to work. When you've got £20 but you want £50 worth of creativity, you've got to think, and that's when it's really good. It is, after all, a creative process. And I love the fact that people go, so what do you do for a living? I'd often say, well, textile art is a good way of describing it, but it falls on a strange sort of strange ground, because there are people who are textile artists who sell their art either once they've created the fabric and dyed and enhanced the fabric, it then becomes a garment or a cushion or a throw or just something beautiful to sit and look at and go, isn't that beautiful and lovely? But it is an art form to give life to a costume, and that's all that we try to do.
I'm asking everyone to pick songs that either link to their careers or that they've got a connection with. And we've chatted about Mad Max Fury Road already.
Yeah, it was a strange soundtrack. It's not one of the ones, although I have it, I don't listen to it very often. Mad Max is a real visual treat. I think that's why the soundtrack isn't so prevalent in the mix. You're so blown away by the visuals, which are stunning. The soundtrack can't interfere. It can only enhance the viewing experience.
Well, here we go. Let's take a listen. This is Let Them Up by Junkie XL from the Mad Max Fury Road soundtrack. That was Let Them Up by Junkie XL for the Mad Max Fury Road soundtrack. We are chatting to textile costume genius Mark Foster, who has travelled a very long way to come and join us up in Bradford. And I'm wanting to hear more about what the realities of working in costume actually are.
The schedule's really, really important, and the schedules are primarily put together by a first AD. One of my very dear friends, Simon Hedges, who's a first AD, said the biggest despair he ever has when he works is them saying, oh, can we overrun an hour tonight? And he says, but I told you 4 months ago, we can't do this. It's period costumes. People have got to get these people out of these period costumes. These period costumes then will go onto a lorry and be driven to the next base for tomorrow's filming. And so, no, we're not going to. I said we needed 2 days. You've tried to cram it into 1 day. For us, working with the costumes, that either means we do cripplingly early starts. And I did. I worked all through this as a costumier, as a dresser, as a costume assistant, as a costume designer, as a textile artist. The logistics of a period drama in particular is just A to B with a lorry and 300 labelled costumes on the back, getting them out, getting them in a marquee, getting them hung up, blah, blah, blah. And then they suddenly go, availability of an artist. We're going to have to bring that week's filming forward 10 days. And then you're like, but we haven't got the costumes for that yet. What can we do? We can only do our best. And changing a schedule, it has ramifications for everybody, I know, not just the costume department. But for a costume department, if you've got a drop-off from Angels the Costumiers or from Bristol Costume Services, or it's coming over from Italy, you've arranged when it's going to be shipped and transported. When you change the schedule, you may not be able to get it there on time, which then means compromise. I've always believed that when I started out, the accounts department was on the side of all of us who needed money to get the costumes, to get microphones for the sound guys, makeup for the makeup guys, the lighting guys, just all this stuff all needed to be paid for, and budgets would be balanced. But now it's very different. Now when I do go out and film, it feels more like we are actually at the mercy now of the budgets. And production companies also have a lovely expression of wanting things to look like, say, Game of Thrones. and you say, but logistically, you have the budget that would have paid for a trailer for Game of Thrones, but you want a good 2.5 hours worth of screen time for the same money. It can't be done. The weather can wipe you out. But yeah, you might shoot one day in the sunshine, you might shoot another day in the pouring rain. You can up the lights and you can't see the rain. Unfortunately, the costumes get wet, the hair gets wet, everything gets wet. So these are all trip hazards.
I guess there are so many things out of people's control, and everyone is working so incredibly hard to such tight both time and budget restrictions, on set in particular. How do you feel that impacts the love and the art behind what you do?
I don't know if it does. In a way, it's that going back to the fact that I always quite liked it when maybe there was not enough money in a pot to do or to create a certain look. So then you've got to be more creative. And sometimes it's the fact that you are fighting a ridiculous, either the timings or availabilities, or just that you can't get the right equipment or paint or whatever to do a job, or even the right costumes. So it's where I assume where our creativity comes to the fore, and we all have that wonderful ability to adapt.
I love it so much. So actually working in costume is as much about creative thinking as it is about creative outputs, about the costumes themselves, because you're constantly working through challenges as a team. Yeah. You're coming up with solutions off the cuff, pardon the pun. I think that's a really interesting perspective that not everyone will consider.
I always use the analogy that you can be stood in a field in the middle of nowhere at something stupid o'clock in the morning, and they say, this cloak is too bright. Can you make it darker? My favourite is, it's too red. Can you make it less red? Because it steals the screen. Red's a tricky beast. I mean, it should be. It's a primary. I mean, it's a strong colour, and it will steal. And you're going, yeah, I don't know what we've got in the pot. Let's have a look. So you have to kind of come up with some mad way of making red look less red. Can we just spray it green, perhaps? I don't know. But I like the fact that that's where you can be sometimes. And part of the reason I've enjoyed taking my career in the direction I've taken it is because I mostly am in a workshop and not on a set. And yet recently I went to help a very dear friend of mine who used to work alongside me and is now heading up departments herself, and that's the magnificent rock and roll Roxanne Warren. She's a raw talent. She's fantastic. There was a body, and the body arrived, and the body was fantastic. And it's like, great. So we all started working on the body, and we ended up working quite late on said body, for which we got free pizza, which I thought was quite groovy. I stayed for the Saturday for the filming of it, and we thought it'd be first thing of the day. And we get to about 10 to 4 in the afternoon, and Roxy said, come on, mate, you might as well make your way home. God knows when they're going to film this. I hadn't even got my car out of the car park, and the phone rang, and it comes through the sat-nav, thankfully. And she said, well, they've shot it. I said, were you there? She said, nope. I said, did you see it? She said, I watched film from the monitor. I said, what did you see? She said, well, you don't see the body, you see the head. And it's coming up out of water, and it's wearing a wig. So you don't really see the face that much, you just see the hair over the face. I went, oh, well, that's how it goes sometimes. And I guess that's what you have to contend with. You will do a wonderful job sometimes, and you'll be so expectant of seeing it on the screen, and it may not be there how you would have expected it to be.
I think that's such a valuable story to hear for people, because there's just something about being able to let it go and be like, cool, I did that, and I'm proud of it. I know we did a great job. That self-validation is so crucial, I feel like, in the arts.
I don't suppose it's like painting onto a canvas when a finished canvas is on display and all of the work can be seen. Because we cover every aspect of a set or a stage, there will be things that we've created that may not get onto the screen or may not be under the bestest spotlight because it may be just a background member of the cast. But I think you don't compromise, because the important thing is that everything you touch with a paintbrush or a compressor and an airbrush, or you dye in the dye vat, everything should be, and I think Tarkovsky, the Russian filmmaker, said, every scene should be a work of art. That's beautiful, saying that. You then have the logistics of time, budget, availability.
Absolutely. And you've got another really fun story to share with us about the next song we're going to play. So Director's Cut, the album by Kate Bush, was within your pick. I've picked The Red Shoes off that album, but tell us why that album in particular means so much to you.
I think it's most of Kate Bush's work that means a lot. I always admired Kate Bush's work. I thought she was fantastic. I also knew Hazel Pethig, who's a costume designer, who took me under her wing for many years. And I'm working and the phone goes and it's Hazel. She says, "What are you doing on the 1st and 2nd of January, young man?" I said, "I don't know, you better tell me." She said, "Oh, great, we're going to Shotover House in Oxford and we're doing stills with Kate Bush." Part of the stills were, many people were dressed up in fantastic costumes and they were brilliant. But one of them was a suit of armour that Kate was going to wear for one of the stills. And the young gentleman who'd created the armour, and myself, were knelt on the floor in front of Kate, attaching the armour legs, which attached to buckles inside the long chain-like shiny silver garment that she wore under the armour. And we're attaching the buckles, and I started to giggle. And the gentleman working on his knees next to me said, "What?" And I said, "I can't believe this." So I looked up at Kate Bush, who was looking down at me, and said, "When I was a kid at school, I thought it'd be really cool to get my hand in your leotard. I'm not yet 50 years old. I have my hand up your skirt." And I did get a look of quite withering contempt, and rightly so, because it's just one of those stupid things you say. But yeah, I like that story, and I've used it when I teach. I always tell the stupid stories because partly they show you the things you shouldn't do.
Let's play her now. This is The Red Shoes by Kate Bush. That was The Red Shoes by Kate Bush. I really want everyone on this show to feel that they can be proud of their work and, self-promote and celebrate what they're doing and where they want to go, the kind of work they're moving on to now, in whatever stage of life they're at. Tell us what your passions are right now and how you're working towards them.
My passions now, I do enjoy speaking, and I've spoken in WI meetings, I've spoken obviously in theatre schools. My latest venture is into Bath Spa Uni. I have always written things since I was a child. The other part of Dave that's really interesting is that he's an amazing keyboard player, and we can now put my poetry, my words, to his fantastic music. But yeah, the idea would be that we would go to somewhere and we would do a class, how to enhance and distress using paints and brushes and dry brushing techniques and the air brushes. And then we do classes on dyeing, and that includes natural dyeing as well, which has to be the way to go. We can't keep tipping chemicals back into water systems. And then we would have a cup of tea, and then in the evening we would go out on a stage, should the venue have such a thing, and we would then perform some works of music and poetry. Certainly my huge epic CV of work, which started as I say when I was 17. I think they're now the things I can utilise to try and help and inform other people embarking on a career in stage, TV or film. And it's a scary world, but with the right aptitude and the right skill and the right encouragement, there's still work out there, and it still can be extraordinarily rewarding.
I think they are beautiful words to end on. I hope this episode with Mark has inspired you to tune into your own creative frequency I'm Izzie Smith, and as always, a huge thank you to the BCB team for their continued support, and thanks to you for listening. Thank you to Dave Brown, who's been sitting in on this conversation with us. Tune in next time to hear another artist share their unconventional roots and unforgettable stories as they make their new waves in their creative vocation.